Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Test Tube Plus today for episode 4 of 5 on borders. So far we've talked about how borders came to be, how they've evolved, what happens when they go bad, but today we're gonna find out how borders are decided. Who picks all of these borders? According to the author Mark Stein, there are 4 critical events that affected the United States' state borders. The American Revolution, the 1808 proposal for the Erie Canal, the adoption of railroads, and also African-American slavery. So let's walk through these. We're gonna focus mostly on the US because we've got a lot of states in a pretty big area and they're all different sizes. They're really weird. If you're in Europe or somewhere else, grab a map. They're easy to find. Before the American Revolution, the British Crown had created colonies of varying shapes and sizes, but after the Revolution, we had to figure out what to do with all this space. Thomas Jefferson was tasked with deciding how the Northwest Territory, which was the land between the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, should be divided. He figured the region should be divided into states having 2 degrees of latitude and 4 degrees of longitude. Very logical. That translates to about 138 miles in height and 276 miles in width, which is roughly 48,000 square miles per state. If that had succeeded for the whole country as it exists today, then we would have about 100 states. But it didn't. They passed on that, and instead, they decided it, kind of case by case. After the Revolution, everybody wanted access to the St. Lawrence Seaway or the St. Lawrence River, which connects Canada and the United States, and waterways were the highways of their day. So that makes sense. Pretty much all major cities are on water, so they allowed as many states as they could to get around the St. Lawrence River. The waterways connect the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, and go through the Great Lakes into all over the Northland and the Midwest. The Erie Canal changed the boundary lines for that region as well, so they connected even more states through those major waterways into the Great Lakes and all the way out to the Atlantic. Pretty amazing stuff. It used to be, like in the 1600s, before there were even states, people would paddle their canoes into the St. Lawrence River and then have to carry them over land a bunch of different times to get to the Great Lakes. They were already doing this, so now we just formalized it with a system to do that and put states around it so they all had access. As railroad lines became more prolific, that was replaced. We no longer needed to get through the waterways to get our goods from the breadbasket of the United States, all of that farmland, out to the ocean. We could do it through railroads. They literally straightened the borders from east to west. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 raised the question of slavery in the states that were set to be created in new land. So not only were we having issues with railroads and shipping goods around, we were having issues with geographic things, but now we were having more political issues. States in the Northwest Territory, like Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin, prohibited slavery. Congress allowed Louisiana to continue slavery because the practice had existed prior to the American acquisition of that area. And Missouri's push for statehood led to the Missouri Compromise in 1820, where they said only states in the new territory whose northern borders were below 36 degrees 30 minutes north latitude would be able to allow slavery, except in Missouri, which was a little further north. Today, if you look at a state map, Missouri is way up there, but Oklahoma has that little panhandle on there. The reason being, Texas sold that section back to the territory or the state of Oklahoma to keep slavery legal in Texas. And why there aren't too many straight lines in the east. There are some straight lines at the bottom because slavery and railroads are moving back and forth. Borders are constantly changing. Borders for states like California and Texas were not regulated by Congress. They just kind of said, oh, well, this is us. All of Texas is here, and all of California is there. Texas was drowning in debt, so they sold a large portion of their land to Congress, and Congress wanted to split all of Texas up into smaller states, but Texas resisted. Instead, a bunch of that chunk of land became other states, really big rectangular ones. California, they drew their own borders as well, and they did it after the gold rush. Originally, if you remember from earlier, California was supposed to be along the Sierra Nevadas, but they're like, hey, Sierra Nevadas got gold in them. So they pushed their border even further, way out past the Rocky Mountains to make sure that they got all of that gold, and it was all in California. Congress, what were they going to do? They obliged. They had really no choice. You know what? That's kind of how it goes. Borders aren't always well defined. We mess up when we draw them, we kind of mess up when we make them, but we're not the only ones who have ill-defined boundaries. Sometimes borders and boundaries are just fuzzy, like old tribal borders and borders between rival animal groups, but there's also borders that nature makes. We're gonna talk about those tomorrow. What do you think about all this? You freaking out about all these borders and how they're all invented and made up and crazy and you didn't even know? Tell us about it in the comments. And keep coming back to Test Tube Plus every single day of the week. I will be here tomorrow talking more about borders. Make sure you subscribe so you see that. You can also come say hi on Twitter. I'm at Trace Dominguez. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow on Test Tube Plus.